Hello, and today we're continuing on our look at improvised weapons. Last week we were looking at the short inflexible, or the baton, as an archetypal weapon. This week we're moving on to the long inflexible. This isn't so long I need two hands to wield it. That's a kind of separate category, funnily enough called two-handed inflexible, which we will come to next week. This is one-handed inflexible, but it's longer. So the archetype for this one would be a cane or a walking stick, or something of that kind of ilk. Which again, not as common as the baton, but is something that is easy enough. There's a lot of things that become quite stick-like. So we're going to have a bit of a look at this. Now there's two main methods of how we would use this as an improvised weapon, depending on how heavy the cane is. So the first one would be something that's relatively light. I've got a rattan stick here. I can whirl that around quite happily. There's not a lot of weight in it. So what we would tend to use for that is Vigne's cane fighting system. I think we have done a whole series of videos on that, so if you want to learn more about that, you can see that. I'm just going to have a little bit of talk about it now. But in terms of, I don't want to try and use this like a sword, which is kind of the urge that people have, is that it's vaguely sword-shaped. The problem is, if an attack comes in against me, and I block, gravity is going to take that straight down into my fingers. I have no form of protection or handguard. So instead, I've got to get used to having my hand higher, so when attacks come in, I need to block here so that the gravity takes the cane away from my fingers, which leads to this weird situation where my guard is actually up here. And when attacks come in on either side, wherever you want to do them, I'm just moving the cane one side to the other to defend. And then once I'm comfortable with that, I'll be whipping out a reply in return. I mean, there's then lots of stuff I can do around this. So, you know, obviously, attack coming in, I can quite happily block and try with a thrust, aiming normally at the solar plexus. I don't have to deal with attacks to the head. I can attack lower. The problem I have is I've got to be slightly careful that if I attack here, my head is very open. So you've just got to be aware of that. You've got to try and keep your hand as high as possible. So after an attack, I would be blocking and then taking my strike down here at the knee, where if the attack comes for the head, I've still got something in terms of a way of defense. Then there's lots of tricks I can use just if my opponent's not either standing. I can use things like flicking the cane up, using this kind of tightening of my grip here to knock things offline to allow me to get in and hit. I can do really quick attacks where I'll come in one side and then rather than going through a full attack, just pivot around my wrist to strike quickly into the other side. So I can do quite a lot, and if you want to get really fancy with it, an attack coming in wherever you want, I can start looking at hooking, grabbing, into restraints and into grappling if we really wanted to. As I said, there's a whole set of videos on this if you want to learn more about Vigne cane fighting. But it's just to understand, it's not a sword and I can't use it as a sword, but I can use it to provide this nice amount of parry on either side and to the head, and all of those allow me a quick reply back at my opponent's head once I've struck. Now, that's fine for something like this. It's going to work. What else have we got here? Half a pull cue. Once you've snapped your two-handed inflexible, you're down to a one-handed inflexible. This will work perfectly well here. You don't want to get smacked on the head by that, but again, it's quite light and mobile. If I come to something a bit heavier, like say a crowbar, yeah, I am not going to be wielding this at speed above my head in a way that's going to be functional. It's far too heavy. So instead, I've got to use a different style of fighting, and for that, we would go to shillelagh, where I'm going to use both hands to hold it, and that makes it better because I've now can spread that weight out a bit more, and the attack will come. Tell you what, let's not actually attack with a crowbar. Great for self-defense purposes. Tell you what, let's use a shillelagh. But from here, if I've got both hands, when I attack out, I'm now going to do this just with one hand and then come back to holding it. So I'm only going down to one hand supporting all of that weight for a very short period of time. And then when attacks are coming in, now I'm going to use flicking up, back, strike out. Yeah? If it comes above the head, yeah, I can still there. I'm going to look to move off, strike out, back again. Once I get comfortable with that, and again, I'm sure we've done a series of shillelagh videos, so again, if you want to do more shillelagh stuff, there's a whole series of videos on that. But I can have stuff where attacks are coming in, and I can be looking to hook across to the outside, using both hands to hit. Yeah, especially if I'm then thinking back, let's switch to something, say, that's got a hook on it. If I'm looking at those kind of tactics, again, attack coming in, if I'm moving off to one side, strike the face, I can then start to look at hooking. Now, if I was with the inside of a crowbar, you ain't walking again in the near future. Yeah? So I can start using this as a way of fighting as well, having the cane up here, and I can flick out. I've got my attacks, and I've got solid defenses around wherever I'm getting attacked. So by using these two, whatever I pick up and go, well, it's too long to really use as a baton, you know? If I'm trying to do stuff where I'm trying to grab my opponent's arm and wrist lock here, it's too long to really start trying to employ a lot of these tactics we were looking at with baton. So if it's too long for that, then I'm instantly going, if it's light, I want to get it high and fast and keep striking at the head. If it's heavier, I want to use it in both hands, and I'm looking to get in a bit closer and do a bit of damage to the legs, or I'm going to use these strikeouts with both hands. And that, again, just gives me enough that if I pick up something, I've got an idea of how to use it, yeah? Bit of PVC piping, you know? It's not going to be great, but it's light. I can start winging it around my head. And it's still going to nip if it smacks into the side of your head.
Make a good noise.
It'll make a good noise too, yeah. It sounds a bit like a lightsaber, it's great. So that gives you some ideas to start playing with, and hopefully again continues to expand this idea that you can pick something up, go, it's a bit like, and start using it. So the next one we're going to be looking at is the two-handed Inflexible, which we'll look at next week. And our archetypal weapon for that is something a bit more like a bayonet or a spear. But we will cover that next week. Until then, take care.